Welcome to Mixed Guy Makes Mixed Food. For those of you who are new, welcome. For those of you who I'm seeing again, great to see you. Now, the first time I had this thing was about 10 years ago, and I had it in Manchester in a pub because it was on their dessert menu. It's the sticky toffee pudding. And when I tried it, I was blown away. Today I'm taking the English classic and giving it an Asian twist, my way. Not only am I going to try and make Asian sticky toffee pudding, but I'm also going to try and make Asian toffee sauce. I'm just trying it for the first time. Jess is trying it for the first time, and I'll let you know how it goes. Let's do this. I will be breaking it down to two parts. Part 1, the Asian sticky pudding, and part 2, the Asian toffee sauce. Let's start with getting ready with your apron. I will be using dried jujube fruit, also known as red or Chinese dates. This is how fresh jujube fruit looks like. I was able to buy this in my local Asian grocery shop. It wasn't expensive. A whole bag like this of slightly under 500 grams was about £4. Luckily, during these pandemic times, I was able to get the washed and sterilized ones. I recommend after opening the bag to just give it a smell. That reminds me of home, especially my grandmother's house back in Malaysia, because she would use this in her cooking to make herbal soup, with a wide variety of other things like goji berries and lotus roots. I do miss my grandmother's cooking. The jujube has a very herbal, earthy note, giving its great depth of flavor and character, but without the heavy sweetness of Middle Eastern dates. Here's a funny story while looking to purchase Asian dates. While I was looking online for Asian dates, all I was getting was sites for Asian women. So it's best to type in Asian dates food. I have cut one open in half for you to have a look at. Here's the pit and the two halves. To give it a size comparison, here is a peanut next to it. They're not very big. The texture of the dates feel like starchy marshmallow. I have to take the pits out of them individually. The simplest way for me was to take a knife and run it in the middle like I do, and peel them apart. Be careful to not cut yourself. Separate the pits and flesh into two different containers. Go on like this for about 20 minutes. This project requires patience. And there you go, some movie magic and they are all done. Keep the pits because we're going to use it as well. Out of the entire bag, scale out 350 grams of the dates. Luckily for me, that was enough. Put it back on the scale and weigh out 5 grams of bicarbonate soda. It will look something like this. And 240 grams of boiling water. We are going to soak the dates to make them soft. Give it a mix, press down so that all the dates come in contact with the water. Cover to touch with clean film, baking paper, or a baking mat. Let the dates soak for at least 30 minutes. Now we can get on to the other ingredients. Remember that bowl with the pits? We're going to pour some hot water over it till it covers the top and let it infuse. We are basically making a date tea. Keep it on one side for now. Next, onto the sugar element. I am using rock sugar because of its pure and bright flavor, giving the cake a light sweetness to it. This comes from Guangdong province. Hopefully I said that right. The only problem is, it comes in chunks like this, so I need a grinder or a food processor to break down the pieces. Look at that sexy amber color. I bet if there was a mosquito in this, somebody would try and make Jurassic Park. That's a movie reference for all of you out there. Put it in your grinder and blend away. I recommend doing it in batches. Sieve it just in case there are any big pieces that didn't get broken down. Now we can go ahead and take a mixing bowl and measure the sugar we have just blended. We need 100 grams of it, and measure out 157 grams of cold cubed butter and 100 grams of light brown sugar to give that hint of caramelized sweetness. I would normally be using dark brown sugar, but I don't want to overpower the sweetness of the cake since there is also a toffee sauce going with it. Use a paddle attachment. Bring out your stand mixer and put it on medium speed. We want to cream the butter till it becomes light and fluffy. While that is happening, measure in another bowl, with a sieve onto it, 210 grams self-raising flour, 2 grams table salt. I will also be using cinnamon powder, and by the looks of it based on the color, shade and fineness of how it's ground, I am probably using Saigon cinnamon. We need 1.2 grams of ground cinnamon. If you can't measure less than a gram, just give it a little pinch. Same with the ground nutmeg. We need 0.4 grams or a tiny pinch or tiny spoon like what I did. Give it a sieve and place to one side. In a small bowl, measure out 190 grams of whole eggs and keep for later. Remember that soaking date tea we made earlier? Now it's time to strain it. Press the dates to really extract the liquid out. I can bet you that if you added some honey and ice to this, it would be a fantastic drink. Measure in another bowl 45 grams of the seed water, 5 grams of vanilla essence to give the cake a bit of back body and flavor. And here's the kicker, 1.2 grams of minced ginger paste to give the cake a slight dimension of spice. Give it a mix. That smells amazing already, like a spiced ginger tea. Time to check out the soaking dates. Give it a mix. Place aside for now. Check the beating butter and sugar. That looks light and fluffy. Give the paddle and the bottom of the bowl a good scraping to really ensure there are no unmixed bits. That looks good to me. Place it back on the mixer and let it go some more. In the meantime, I'm going to be using a hand blender. If you don't have one, you can use a food processor. I'm going to pulse it all around. It doesn't have to be super fine. I have left some bits unblended to give the cake some texture. Pour onto it the seed water, vanilla essence and ginger mixture. Give it a nice mix. Transfer it to another bowl because I need this glassware to cook the cake in. We're also going to line the glass with baking paper. I'm giving it an oil spray. Here is my little trick to measuring the baking paper. You don't have to be precise. Use your fingers to measure the corner. That will be the height. Once you have measured the corners, cut towards it. I'm using a blade, but you can use a knife or a scissor. Press down and flatten the sides. And there you have it. You can keep that aside on standby. Back to the beating butter, pour the eggs in slowly, go about half, and then let it mix and then pour the rest in. Once all the eggs have been poured in, pour half of the flour mixture in and let that mix. Then at this point, I want better control, so I decided to mix it by hand. Mix in half of the date puree and then alternate with the flour and then back onto the date puree. Mix well by folding the batter on itself. It should still look light and fluffy. At this point, have a taste. I was surprised at how good the raw mix tastes like. Now I can't wait for the finished product. I clearly went back for more. Pour the mixture into the glassware. Gently spread it evenly around. Bake in an oven set at 170 degrees Celsius for about 50 minutes to start with. Now while the cake is baking, it's time for the Asian toffee sauce. I have chosen to use soy milk as the base of the toffee sauce to give it a lighter body, but the consistency of soy milk isn't as thick as cream, so I'm going to have to reduce it by half to thicken it. We need 500 grams of soy milk. I'm using palm sugar, which is coconut based, to give it that light body sugar flavor. This comes from Thailand. They come in pucks like this at about 50 grams per piece. Measure out 100 grams of palm sugar, and lucky for me, all I needed was 2. Don't forget to stir the soy milk, we don't want the bottom to scorch. Measure out 100 grams of dark brown sugar. I have decided to use dark brown sugar here because it adds that richness to the sauce. Since I'm not using too much, the sweetness will be balanced from the rest of the other ingredients in the cake. 5 grams of vanilla essence, 1 pinch of sea salt to counter the sweetness. Measure out in a separate bowl 115 grams of butter. Let's go back to the stove with the reduced soy milk. Pour in the sugar mixture. Whisk and you will notice it turn a nice light brown in color. After the sugar has dissolved, do the spoon test. It's still a bit too loose at this point. Let it boil rapidly for about 5 minutes. We want a nice coating on the spoon. You will notice the bubbles getting smaller and more rapid. It's getting thicker. There we go, a nice thin, even coating. Have a taste. Watch out, because it is still hot. That was surprisingly good. The sauce should have a nice shiny finish, and when you tilt the pot back, it should flow evenly down. Let's check on the cake now. The temperature probe reads at about 104 degrees Celsius and it comes out clean. That's ready. Take the cake out and let it rest. You should really smell this right now. Yes, that is a chopstick, since we are doing something Asian inspired. I am using this to create holes in the cake. Here comes the best part, pouring the sauce over the cake. This sauce recipe is enough for this cake recipe. Spread it gently over the cake. The sauce has already started going in the cake. Let the cake soak the sauce in for about 10 minutes. I present to you our first ever Asian Sticky Toffee Pudding. A generous amount of sauce, steamy, just came out of the oven. What more can you want? It goes well with ice cream or custard, but we wanted to try this on its own with its own sauce. The first piece is always the hardest to get out perfectly. And there you have it. This is the finished product. There is definitely some herbal notes to this and hints of nuttiness to it as well. For those Malaysians out there, this sauce isn't super thick or heavy, so it doesn't give you that jelat feeling. You can of course make the date puree smooth, but I like the little bits in it because then you can really taste the jujubes. Jess, however, prefers it if it were smoother. Don't worry if you are having trouble finishing this. You can always freeze it for up to 3 months and cut portions out whenever you want. You can heat it back up in the microwave. The combination of the Asian toffee sauce and the Asian sticky toffee pudding was very good. Yeah, definitely we have more than enough for the next few days. Yeah, I'd say this is a definite winner. One more. So to conclude today's project, Jess and I thought that today's episode was a winner. We really enjoyed the combination of the mix between English and Asian influenced sticky toffee pudding. Today's Asian sticky toffee pudding had everything that the original has without insulting it. With each and every bite, we were able to taste all the hints of cinnamon, nutmeg, and even that minced ginger that we added. Jess and I were surprised how the Asian toffee sauce came out. We were surprised by the fact that it wasn't heavy because I didn't use any double cream. It complemented the dish very well. It was also as rich and it was just as delicious. Well, thank you for joining me on this journey today. If you liked what you watched or learned something, leave it a thumbs up, comment, or even subscribe. See you next time. Today I'm taking an English classic and making an Asian what was the word? What was the sentence again? Giving it, not taking it, giving it. Today I'm taking an English classic, the sticky toffee pudding. Oh. That's why I wear an apron. Well, thank you for joining me on today's journey. If you enjoyed what you watched, saw, looked at, watched, does that make sense? Watched? If you enjoyed what you watched,